Hello, my name is Jamila, and I am a facilitator in the Workforce Office in Abilene. And today I want to talk to you for a few minutes about making a great first impression. Hello, my name is Jamila, and I am a facilitator in the Workforce Office in Abilene. And today I want to talk to you for a few minutes about making a great first impression at your next interview. I have been a facilitator for a couple of years now, and I hear a lot of people say that the interview process is nerve-wracking and just really challenging. What I say to that is, the interview is just an opportunity for the employer to get to know you a little bit better, and just know that the more time you spend thinking about how you're qualified and how you're experienced for the job, the better you're going to do in that interview. So we'll talk about that today. Today we'll discuss making a good first impression, understanding the position and the business, answering common questions, asking good questions, communicating non-verbally, and dressing for success. Let's go ahead and get started. So these are a couple of quick tips when it comes to making a good first impression. Just some areas for us to get started. First of all, you want to make sure you show up on time. So what is on time? Between 10 and 15 minutes early is going to be a good rule of thumb for you. Make sure you dress the part. Anytime that you're receiving or returning an application, make sure you go interview ready. You never know when you're going to be called to the back to speak to the hiring manager about your skills and experience. Bring your resume. While you're job seeking, always have a copy of your resume on you. Bring a copy for yourself, bring a copy for the employer, and anyone else who might be interested in knowing about your skills and your background. You might have it tucked away in your car, on a flash drive, or even drafted in your email, just in case you might need to send it pretty quickly. So you also want to have your phone put away. Even though it's not ringing or buzzing or making any type of noise, it still works as a subconscious distractor. So the fact that it's standing out where everyone can see, that employer might be thinking, this person very potentially could be distracted by their phone. So do your best to have it put away throughout the entire interview. Then finally, have all your information accessible. So some things might be easily researched on your phone, but try to have that information collected beforehand, have it tucked away and easy to access during the interview, whenever you might need it. Some interviewers are going to ask questions based on the job description, so the more you understand that job description, the better you're going to do. Let's take this example for a job for an assistant store manager. Some of the things highlighted here are things that you want to make sure you say in that type of interview. Positive, approachable manner. Resolve, so maybe you have some type of conflict resolution. Excellent customer service would be good to emphasize. You'll want to definitely describe your ability to supervise, train, and develop store team members. Ordering merchandise and record keeping. Management responsibilities. And policies and procedures. So definitely take a look at your job description, find out what things you want to make sure you say in your interview. Even though you might not be asked about those specific things, your answers can very well encompass some of the things that you know they're looking for through their job description. Now that we've talked about understanding the position, let's talk for a little bit about researching the business. So what should you know about the business before the interview? First off, the skills and experience the company values. You'll want to know going in, does the company value that you're an independent critical thinker, or are they more concerned that you do the work and don't offer a lot of pushback? Think about what your organization values most. Sometimes you can know the key players in the organizations, like the director or some of the top managers. If you do know them, then you'll want to use what you know in the interview. You also want to learn the company's culture, mission, and values. That way, when they ask you to describe how you're a good fit for the organization, you'll know exactly why. So, where can you find this information? You can find this information on the company website. Company information posted on the job description often will tell you about the business before they tell you about the job. So definitely take a moment to read about the business first. Some social media websites like Facebook, LinkedIn, sometimes they're going to tell you that company information as well. And then finally, friends and family. They make a great resource for the information you need to interview well. So if you know someone working at a place that you would like to work, ask them some insider details on that organization. Of course, only ask for the details that are going to help you interview well. So now we can talk for a few minutes about answering common questions. Your interviewer might not ask these exact questions in this exact order, but often preparing your answers for these questions will help you interview well in any interview situation. So think about these questions. Don't rehearse them too much, but definitely think about what's true for you and what's important for you to say in the interview. One question employers often ask before you even take a seat is to tell me about yourself. To answer this question, you'll want to think about your previous work experience, your knowledge, skills, and abilities. To get more personal for this question, think about what draws you to this type of work. What are you passionate about? This is what's considered an icebreaker question, but be careful to not get too personal at this point. This isn't a great time to talk about your cousin or your dog. That's just not relevant. Very much try to stick to what's relevant to the job, and don't be afraid to tell them a little bit about why you enjoy the work. To end this first question on a good note, you might consider just thanking them for the opportunity to interview. Another commonly asked question is, tell me your strengths. There are tons of strengths you can select from. I do recommend talking a little bit about some of your character strengths. So, what are some things that describe you? Some people might say communication, adaptability, good problem solver, teamwork, planning an organization, maybe they're enthusiastic. Think about what's true for you. What have you been noticed for in your previous work situations? Do your best to select 3 strengths that you believe you have, and it doesn't have to be from this list. It can be from something that you've heard someone else say about you also. For every strength that you identify for yourself, be prepared to provide a specific example of when you showed that strength in your previous work. Another question might ask, describe your areas for improvement. Some people might say that they're unassertive, stubborn, or uncompromising, reluctant to share, unorganized, or maybe they're too sensitive. You want to think about what's true about you, and you probably want to avoid answers like, I work too hard, or I just like to do everything. While that may be true, you want to think about something that is worth improving on. Employers today are more interested that you know what areas you struggle in, rather than are you good at everything and you're just not aware of your areas for improvement. So think about those things as you get ready to answer the question, areas for improvement. When you do identify your areas for improvement, you might describe when you first noticed that it was an area for improvement and how you've begun making changes already. Tell a story and paint the picture of your continual growth and improvement. Let's now talk about other common questions that you can answer. One question asks, why do you want to work here? To answer this question, you might think about what skills you want to utilize. What skills do you want to improve on? What draws you toward that organization? Anything special? What are some of your long-term goals? Essentially, what you're doing in this question is you're proving to them that you working there is a good fit. So think actively about what draws you toward them, what you can actually pick up while you're there, and how you can contribute. That's actually our next question. What do you think you can contribute? What about your work stands out? What have you been praised for in previous work situations? The more you can prepare the answers to these questions, the more you can prove your unique qualifications during the interview. We'll move forward now to talk about another question. If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why? Now, it might seem like a funny question, but employers are really using this question to know a little bit about your character and to see how you answer. Some people might say, I don't really want to answer that question, pass, but it is in fact an interview question. Take your time. Just because you aren't prepared for a question doesn't mean you can't answer it well. Take a moment, think about it, and then respond. It is important that you answer. Be conscious of what you communicate about your character and about your work ethic. So I asked one person what animal they would be and why, and they said they'd be a bird so they can fly far, far away. I asked someone else, and they also said a bird, except they say they'd be a bird so they can soar high and do greater than they had before. So you think about the difference in those two responses. Make sure, again, you're thinking about what you're communicating about your character and your work ethic. Another question asks, tell me about a time when. This is what is called a behavioral question. Essentially, they're asking you to tell them a story about how you maybe reacted or responded in a particular work situation. So you want to think about previous work situations before coming into the interview. Think about a time maybe you had to confront someone. Talk about your biggest professional mistake or a time when something did not go the way you expected. Sometimes these can be a little uncomfortable, but essentially the employer is looking to know a little bit about your character. So not just what you say in the interview, but situations that have actually happened. So a final question might ask, do you have any questions for us? And the answer is yes. Always yes. You show your preparedness for the interview when you have a good question to ask them. So here are a few that you might think about asking. What would a regular day in this job be like? Essentially, you're asking for a day in the life. You want to know what the work day is like, what the work week is like, and maybe even the year at a glance. You can ask, will you tell me a bit about your workplace? In this way, you might be wanting to know about the company culture, what work environment you can expect. Basically, what is it like working in that particular business? You can ask what skills and experience did the person have before you? You might ask, what were their strengths? What skills and experience made them effective in their role? What expectations do you have for this role going forward? This shows that you're truly interested in the role and how you can really make an impact while you're there. Similarly, you might ask, could you describe your ideal candidate for this job? What were their strengths? What skills and experience will make them effective? What expectations do you have for this role? Is there opportunity for advancement? This demonstrates your interest in the job, shows you're thinking ahead, and you might even consider following up by asking how you can move ahead, assuming you do well in the role that you're taking on. Quick question. When do you think is a good time to ask about compensation, time off, and that type of thing? I recommend letting the interviewer be the first person to mention it. More often, the interviewer will express the details of your compensation. You don't want to be too eager. They might want to discuss compensation during a follow-up interview, so definitely be ready for that. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about what you say in an interview, but according to this graph here, that's only 7% of what's communicated in your message. 38% is your voice and tone, and 55% is your body language. So just know how both voice and tone and body language come together to make a huge difference in the message that you bring across. For body language, make sure you sit up, lean in, unfold your arms, include some nodding and some gestures. For your use of eyes, make sure that there is appropriate eye contact. Fixed gaze, but not a stare down. Use of space, just make sure it's appropriate for the interviewer. Across from the table is usually sufficient. Touching behavior will be limited for the interview, so a handshake, and although this is West Texas, you might avoid a bear hug this time. Tone of voice, just make sure you speak clearly. Full sentences is important during the interview process. The final element of nonverbal communication is dressing for success. Although we've touched on this already, you just want to think about how you communicate a lot by the way you dress. Anytime you're thinking about making a great first impression for your next job, ensure that you have clean and polished conservative dress, well-groomed hairstyle, cleaned and trimmed fingernails, minimal cologne or perfume, no visible piercings, and minimal jewelry. So in today's workshop, we've talked about making a good first impression, understanding the position and the business, answering common questions, asking good questions, communicating nonverbally, and dressing for success. I hope over the last few minutes you've thought about how you're uniquely qualified for the job you're going for and have written down a few notes so you can practice and remember those things before going into the interview. That's all for today. Thank you so much, and I'm wishing you all the best in your job search.